This is the Soul's Journey podcast with Kat and Mel, where we bring you the latest energy updates, spiritual guidance and support for your spiritual awakening journey.
I think sometimes with the intensity of the energies and the changing in our emotional state, the mind can freak out a little bit sometimes because it can't make sense of what's happening. And even if somebody explains it, you can't really make sense of this ascension that we're in, because the mind is trying to simplify everything and put it into neat little boxes and label it up. And there are some things that we're perhaps not quite ready to understand, depending on our individual journeys. And there are some concepts that we just about manage to get our heads around that are a bit, we could tell the average person and they think that you're completely crazy because it's too much for them to be able to compute, because it's so different. And we get to the next stage when we're ready to. But if the mind starts freaking out, because mine's done it a couple of times with this ascension, when I think it was back in January, I was just walking through the woods and then walking in town. And I said, I feel like I'm ungrounded because I feel like I'm walking through a dream. I don't feel like I'm fully awake. So I took steps to ground myself, but I still didn't feel like I was fully awake. And everything started to feel a bit more malleable and a bit more changeable. And I've noticed how my external reality is very much influenced by my internal state and by my energy and frequency. And it can cause a little bit of a mental freak out because the mind's like, well, let's just go back to how it was. We that's familiar. I liked how it was. We'll go back there. I don't want to go back there. Thanks. I don't want to go back a day, let alone a few years. But it's that sense of unfamiliarity, change, and moving into a very unknown future.
This chaotic energy is not leading us in any direction, because we're meant to be the ones who are choosing the direction that we want to take. So it's actually an opportunity for us to do that. And the power, is in your hands. So it's really up to you to actually make that choice.
Welcome to the Soul's Journey podcast. Today we'll be continuing our talk about the eclipse energies, looking at how this is affecting us, how the ascension energies are affecting us, and what steps we can take to help us to navigate this time.
Yes, so welcome. It has been intense, I think. To start the conversation, I'm guessing many people are maybe going through that intensity as well. We mentioned that in the last podcast, but I just wanted to give a quick maybe reminder that when we had the lunar eclipse, it usually works more on the internal. It works more internally for us. So that's when maybe emotional endings are happening, and there's more emotional intensity. But now we already are in the eclipse corridor for the solar eclipse, which is more about transformation and things changing in the outer world. So they're all kind of we're I guess merging both of them at the minute, because they're all close by. How have you been, Mel?
Very up and down, I would say. In fact, I spoke to somebody earlier today and described it as turbulent, because I'm quite steady and stable with my emotions normally, and I'm very grounded. So it's quite bizarre for me to be literally feeling just intense joy and delight and excitement 1 minute, and then literally it might be an hour later and I'm just saying, I can't handle this, I've had enough, take me off this planet. and I mean it, in the moment I mean it. I think I can't deal with this. I just feel suddenly like I'm on the onset of a massive panic attack. The anxiety suddenly is crippling, and there's no reason for it. And this is where the mind starts to freak out, because the mind is saying, well, I'm just sat here and I was fine a minute ago. Why do I suddenly feel like this massive sense of impending doom? And then it will pass. But it's really bizarre. I've never felt it this intense before. Certainly this year, and particularly this month, has been really major highs and really major lows, to the point where I thought, do I actually need to see a doctor? This isn't like me. So yes, it's really strange, but I'm really thankful for the highs. Yes, they're lovely, and I'm in one now, and I feel great today. All day I've felt wonderful, but a couple of days ago it was a very different picture.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I am. there's so much to astrology that I haven't studied. I don't call myself an astrologer, definitely just an enthusiast right now, because the more you dive into it, the more you notice that there's more that you need to know. So, but having said that, understanding some of the energies, I try and watch how it manifests in my life, and I'm trying to understand, by understanding the planets, the energies that they carry, and then which houses they're in for me personally, because everyone obviously will have a different setup. I'm trying to watch it, but I gotta say it's not that obvious right now for me, especially that solar eclipse, because it's meant to be in my, I know it's right on my moon, which is emotional life, personal life, but my moon is in my 10th house of the public life and career and work status. So I don't know how that's affecting this, to be honest. So I can't really give anyone any feedback yet. Obviously, we're only just entering that solar eclipse that's coming up. So I guess we'll see. We might give you an update later. But the lunar eclipse, I've also been experiencing some intense emotions, although I put my hand up, I have been for a while. So it's not like it's news for me, especially I think since Mars went retrograde. It's not retrograde now, but it's still in the sign of Cancer. I'm pretty sure it's still going through the sign of Cancer, and I'm Cancer rising. So yeah, so I feel like that as well, like you said, the intensity. But the lunar eclipse also that was happening in Virgo, because that was your that's not far from your moon's sun sign. I can't remember what degree you have your sun, but you are, no, sorry, rising.
Rising,
You're
yeah.
a rising. You're a Virgo rising. For me, Virgo sign is in my third house and also my fourth. But the 23rd degree is in my fourth, which is the degree of, the house of anything to do with home life, but also with the past. It's a house of, could also be past lives, but it's anything to do with the hearth, I guess, of the home, the childhood home, and all that sort of stuff. So it was interesting that at the time I was traveling back to my home country around that time, and I have met with the third house also is siblings. So I have met with one of my siblings I haven't seen for a little while. So I guess in that way I'm thinking, oh, that kind of correlates. That's interesting how that came together. And then we were going through a bit of a intense weekend, let's say, because of my son's illness, which is again home, right? Home life. But so I can kind of see that right now. But yeah, the solar eclipse, I gotta say, it's still a little bit of a mystery for me in my personal life anyway. So I'm just, watching and waiting to see what happens, really.
So how does somebody know if somebody's got their birth chart, and how does it correlate to what's happening now? So is it you look at where the solar eclipse, for example, which sign that's going to happen in, and then you look to see what have you got in your birth chart where that sign features and which house is it in? So if the solar eclipse was in Aries, where have you got Aries in your birth chart and what house is it in? That's how you sort of line it up and
Yeah.
can understand how it might affect you personally.
Yes, exactly. So there are 12 houses in your astrological chart, and each of them cover a different area of your life. And then you also have planets. So, like the sun, the moon, Neptune, Pluto, and all of that stuff. So, whenever there is an eclipse happening or any sort of transit, really, if it is in some sort of a close contact or it's at an angle to a personal planet, then usually we would feel it more intensely because it's affecting our planet. Usually, if it's a personal planet, not the outer planets like Pluto and Jupiter. Although Jupiter, maybe not Jupiter, but Pluto, Neptune, and Saturn, maybe a little bit less because they're not personal; they're generational planets. So first you would look, is it making any aspects to my personal planet, and then which house it's in. So yes, so each sign would rule a house in your chart. and that will give you a little bit more detail. But then the third thing would be the degree of the eclipse. Everything, any transits that are happening, any eclipses are at a certain degree, and there are 30 degrees per house. So if you have a planet at a certain degree or an important point in your chart, and that's where the eclipse is happening, for example, like we mentioned last time, the solar eclipse now on the 29th of March is right on my moon, 9 degrees in Aries. So that should be impacting me quite significantly because it's exactly in the same place. So those are the things that you would look at to kind of decipher whether it's actually going to have a bigger impact or not. It could be very little and you might not even notice.
So what you would need to know really is you'd need your own birth chart, and you need to know where these things happen. So where was the lunar eclipse? Which constellation was it in? And then find that constellation where it features
in your chart.
In your chart, and with the planets as well. I find that the more like you say, the more I look into astrology, the more I think, gosh, it's actually quite complex. But I think
it is. And then, sorry, go on.
No, it's okay. For the most part, I can understand the daily sort of impact things have, like where the moon is and how that impacts me, how I'm feeling on a day-to-day basis. It's when you start to sort of line these big events up with your birth chart to try and work out how that could impact you on a personal level.
And then when you start digging into it more, and then you find out that there are different astrological charts, and there are different systems to read the chart, like the Western modern astrology, or the Hellenistic more traditional astrology, or the Vedic astrology, or esoteric astrology, or evolutionary astrology. It's like you just think at some point, it's just like, oh my God. And people do at some point, they do decide what calls to them a little bit more, when you become an astrologer, and what area of astrology is more interesting to you, because then also you have mundane astrology, so events in the world. Then you have the personal astrology, personal lives of people. You have medical astrology, astrocartography, so astrology of location. And the other one, I was just thinking, I just lost it, but there was one other one recently that I found out. Horary astrology, which is an astrology that can help you with things like very, very detailed things that can help with, for example, looking for missing people, or looking for your keys missing. If you've lost your keys or something, you use horary astrology to help you locate where they are. For instance, wow. I don't even know how that works because I didn't look into it. And it can answer questions very detailed, such as, will I receive my passport next month or something? Things like that. So it's a vast subject. So yeah, the more you dig into it, the more you know that there's just so much more to know.
What I find really fascinating as well is when we get a major change. So one of the outer planets, like Neptune, are much more slow moving. So of course, when they move into a different sign, they stay there for a lot longer. But that has an impact for a number of years. Pluto moving into something else has a huge impact. But I've watched a couple of astrologers recently talk about the last time we had this planet in this constellation and blah, blah, blah. And all of these things historically that have happened that have been pretty major, like revolutions and things like that. And they've tied that in with the same time that we're going through now. And they can kind of map that back through the ages and say, well, in these years, this is when this was happening. What was happening on the planet that was major? What was happening that was transformational? Because we have many years that come and go where nothing really happens, but there are certain things in history, markers in history that stand out. And when you map them and you look at where the planets were, and I've seen a few people talk about different things that are just fascinating. Historical events and the planets, just really interesting.
Exactly. And that's why whenever the generational planets move signs, because it's such a long span of the effect that it has, it's not something that you're just going to feel one day or 2 days and then it's gone. it will continue unraveling as the time goes on. And one of the reasons why 2025 is such a pivotal year is because there are so many generational planets changing signs. So, like we mentioned last time, Neptune wasn't in Aries for the last 164, 65 years. So, this is a once in a lifetime occurrence for us. And so, I believe Saturn is going into Aries as well. Saturn has a little bit of a shorter time span, not that many years, but I can't remember the last time it was in Aries. It still stays there for a good few years in one sign, Saturn. And some other planets, I can't remember. I think Uranus is going to be changing into Gemini, and Jupiter now going to Cancer, I think. So, but yet they all have different time spans in each sign. I can't remember all of them, but yeah, just because they're all changing and moving it within this 1 year, that's why it's, all the astrologers are talking about this really pivotal year.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It is, but it's also like nerve-wracking, because I think if I didn't have all this knowledge, I don't know how I would even deal with it, to be honest, because it's a lot, It's a lot.
And we want to make sense of it, but we're also looking for sort of, why are we feeling so strange, and why are our emotions all over the place? And when, if something happens in your life that's upsetting, obviously you're going to go through a period of some sort of emotional reaction to that. When it kind of freaks you out is when there's nothing happening and you feel the emotions like up here and down here and up here and down here. And that's when people look to like, well, why am I feeling like this? This doesn't make any sense. I've got no reason why I'm going through such a turbulent time, especially if it's completely out of character. And so we look to see, well, what's happening energetically that could be impacting me, because our energy affects everything, but everything also affects our energy. So if we are sort of, we're all part of the collective human consciousness, as well as having our individual consciousness, we're going to feel it. If suddenly everybody's feeling different things, we're all connected. And when you have conversations with people and they sort of mirror back how you're feeling, you realize that, oh, actually it's not just me. And it's comforting.
It is. Yes. Yes, definitely. I guess that might be a good segue into what can we do to help ourselves during these turbulent times. So personally for me, so I think, like you said, different people experience things differently, right? Again, when we talk about signs, if you're not into astrology, it might be probably good if you started looking into it, because it might give you some understanding of yourself. Why are you the way you are versus someone else? Instead of comparing yourself, you can actually just have a look at what your nature is and just embrace it and understand it. Because you said, Mel, that you maybe don't feel like this on a regular basis. This is very unusual for you. And you have, obviously, again, disclaimer, astrological charts are very complex, right? So I'm making it simple and by just highlighting the obvious things, but please bear in mind it's not that simple. But you usually do look at your big three, so your ascendant, your sun, and your moon, to give you the first clue of what you're like and what your nature, what your natural way of it is for you. And I think if you have water signs quite prominent in your chart, the ups and downs emotional will be actually quite normal. I am a Cancer rising, and so I've learned that it's very normal for me. So when you said, for you, maybe it's unusual, for me, it's actually not unusual. If anything, it's just me maybe understanding how to go through those waves, how to deal with them and what they mean. So overall, I think when it comes to emotional life, because we all have it, I think the important thing is for us to just acknowledge them and not fight with them to start with. Don't fight with your emotions. Don't suppress them. Just sit with them if you can. whatever the emotion is, of course. If you feel like you need to, hit a pillow, then go and do that. Obviously, as long as it's all safe, then make sure that you release it in somehow, or you actually go through it in a healthy way. So that's one thing, because I don't want people to get into a habit of so-called spiritual bypassing, when we just start ignoring, or we just try and be like, oh, just love and light. No, everything's fine. Nothing touches me. Nothing bothers me. I'm just, all love and light, and and I'll just try and create this, I don't know, something different for me. Like right now, when you're in the moment of something difficult, it's not going to work, because we're still human, right? So that's one point. The other one, find ways, what helps you. So for me personally, spirituality helps me. So it's been a while. It's taken many years before I even discovered that side of myself, because it was very much suppressed. But when I did, I found a lot of solace in that. So whether that is meditating, or talking to angels, my guides, or my higher self, or pulling a card for myself, it all helps me go through these sort of situations, these difficult times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I for me, my chart is mainly fire and air. So not very much water at all, actually. I've got a bit of earth, but it's mainly fire and air. So I'm quite emotionally stable most of the time. That's not to say I don't get upset. I do. But I look at it in a very fire way, like, okay, let's have a heal, let's cry, and then let's get on with it. I'm busy. Like,
That's very similar because of my Aries moon. Yeah, but go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, and that's how I react to it. I look at it in quite a pragmatic way, but I like, come on, let's get on with it then. It can be as intense as you want. I'll be there for it, but I'm busy, so we've got 20 minutes. I got stuff to do. So I look at it in a very sort of driven way. But saying that, when I've been struggling with my emotions, I actually crave water, which is really strange. Like, I need to go to the sea, I need to go to the river, or anything. And when I'm struggling, that's the one, I guess, because I haven't got so much of it in my chart, I kind of need it. For the most part, I'm okay. But when I'm struggling, I crave being by the sea and the water. So it might be that one of the elements is calling to you, and it could be any of them. It might be that you think, oh, I really need to go. I mean, I often go into the woods and go, and I need to be amongst the trees. I find I'm really grounded and calm when I'm amongst the trees. And most of the time, that's what I'm fine with that. That's kind of my day to day, hence the picture on my wall behind me. But when I'm struggling, I might crave something different. So, some people love lighting candles, they love the flame, they love the fire. Some people like to get outside in the fresh air and just feel the air on their face. But the elements I find can help. And certainly if you're craving one of them, it might be that you've been lacking that element and you need to bring that in to get that balance. And so for me, water is usually lacking in my external world. So then I'll suddenly be at the beach every day for a week.
That's very interesting, and that's a good point, because you reminded me how when I'm in a very stressed out mood, just going out is just having my feet on the actual, ground, even if it's pavement, it doesn't matter, but I'm walking on it, because I live in a flat on the second floor, so I'm quite far away. And I'm lacking earth in my chart. And one of my favorite meditations for cleansing is one when I'm sitting in the woods and touching the ground, the soil. And I imagine, walking barefoot on the soil, or actually doing that in real life when it's, summer. I do that, and I love it. And I can really feel the difference. And I know that whenever I'm feeling bad, the minute I go out and I'm on the ground, it's like, it just like lifts off. So yeah, that's a very good point.
And it's interesting because I've got a lot of fire in my chart, and I don't really like lighting candles and using fire. A lot of people will do burning rituals and things like that. I avoid it at all costs. I'm not hugely comfortable with fire, I've got to be honest, from a practical perspective. but maybe it's because I've got so much of it in my chart. I never crave it. I don't crave fire and air, but I do crave water in particular, and earth, and that's what I've got slightly less of. So
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I do, because now that you're talking, I'm trying to think of my chart, and I often forget because I just know that I have very little earth, but I have the most. I know that I have the most fire. Like if you look at the composition of all of the planets and where they are on my chart, it says that fire is the strongest, and then I think it's air and then water, but air and water are kind of similar, except my ascendant, which is quite a prominent placement, is water, so it has that strength. So it's like, that's why I mean the charts are very, very complex, and but they can really shed light on many things for you. But yeah, overall, just listen to yourself and don't beat yourself up and not suppress anything, and don't think about yourself as going crazy or anything. Things happen, and especially during those times that are quite intense anyway.
yeah. And I think sometimes with the intensity of the energies and the changing in our emotional state, the mind can freak out a little bit sometimes because it can't make sense of what's happening. And even if somebody explains it, you can't really make sense of this ascension that we're in, because the mind is trying to simplify everything and put it into neat little boxes and label it up. And there are some things that we're perhaps not quite ready to understand, depending on our individual journeys. And there are some concepts that we just about manage to get our heads around that are a bit, we could tell the average person and they think that you're completely crazy because it's too much for them to be able to compute, because it's so different. And we get to the next stage when we're ready to. But if the mind starts freaking out, because mine's done it a couple of times with this ascension, when I think it was back in January, I was just walking through the woods and then walking in town. And I said, I feel like I'm ungrounded because I feel like I'm walking through a dream. I don't feel like I'm fully awake. So I took steps to ground myself, but I still didn't feel like I was fully awake. And everything started to feel a bit more malleable and a bit more changeable. And I've noticed how my external reality is very much influenced by my internal state and by my energy and frequency. And it can cause a little bit of a mental freak out, because the mind's like, well, let's just go back to how it was. We that's familiar. I liked how it was. We'll go back there. I don't want to go back there. Thanks. I don't want to go back a day, let alone a few years. But it's that sense of unfamiliarity, change, and moving into a very unknown future that we're going in at the moment. And I don't know what's coming. I only know how I feel right now and what I've heard. And just to keep the hope, really, that it's all for a positive reason. But it's massive change, and we humans don't really like too much change.
No. And when big changes are coming, transformations, they're always coming through struggles, major struggles. And it's the same with when the butterfly is birthed. Let's say, obviously, butterfly starts with a caterpillar, right? And then they go into a cocoon, and then they have to break out of the cocoon with no one's help and by themselves. And it's also not an easy process. Same with dragonflies. So there are many examples like that in nature, and it just shows you that that's how transformation looks like, really.
Yeah, because the dragonfly often comes up in oracle cards as being a symbol of transformation. And the butterfly, of course, the butterfly is a really obvious one. And in the tarot, we've got the Tower card, which is a sign of transformation, but it's usually a breakdown followed by a breakthrough. And things have to crumble that aren't working before something new is kind of rebirthed. And there's lots of examples of that, I guess, in nature. Well, it's death and rebirth, isn't it? Really, it's kind of like an ending and a beginning. But change is generally sort of painful. Transformation is generally painful, and sometimes really scary. But that's where the magic happens, I guess.
Yes.
It's yet to be seen because we're in the middle of it at the moment. So it's really, we talk about change and transformation, but we don't know what we're transforming into. We don't know what's coming. we know how we're feeling in the middle of it, but we haven't got to the other end where we can look back and say, oh, look how much we've all changed, and look what's happened now. We're in this washing machine of
Yes.
emotions at the moment. It's very unpleasant.
Although I can see, what we can see are people's attitudes, because I feel, well, I see a lot of attitudes have changed in people in the past few years. The attitudes are also a little bit more polarized, but I feel that people are at least, in a sense, coming out with them a little bit more. They're maybe a little bit, more empowered to share their views, whether you agree with someone or you don't. The whole point is that we're kind of we've been stirred up internally so much that it's all just like, we all feel like we have enough, and we just, we share our opinions a lot more, maybe in a bit stronger way. But there's a lot of people that are looking to spirituality now more, are asking questions, are more interested. I mean, so there is an example that I want to show you of a story, one man's story that I've listened to, and he was going through major health troubles. He was really almost at the end of it, in a sense of the ability to even deal with what he was dealing with. He previously, he was a very healthy man. There was nothing wrong, and then something happened, and he was suddenly on his knees. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't see properly. Literally, it was really bad. Okay, and he was not a religious man, not a spiritual man. Just, let's say everyday Joe, in a sense, right? He was just living his life, and then this horrible thing happened, and he suddenly was so desperate that he literally said, and the thing is also that he was, just to mention, he wasn't treated very well by the doctors at the time, or they weren't really listening. So it's kind of like one of those stories that we hear about, we try to tell them something, they're not really listening. So he wasn't really having much support around. The point is that it's just around in the environment, he didn't have much support. And so all he could do at some point, he just said, okay, God, he said, God, if you help me with this, I promise you, I will talk about it. Because, up until then, he wasn't very vocal about anything. Like I said, just living a normal life. But he was in such a desperate state that he said that out loud, and he decided it was his last point of, help. And it's really amazing to hear his story, because then he said, suddenly someone just contacted him, not anyone that he even knows. They contacted him online about this certain doctor for him to go and see. And that particular then doctor helped him, right? And since then, he said, because he made such a promise, to God, literally, or God, source, universe, whatever you want to call it, all of these things started happening, and people actually started listening to him, and he got the right doctor, and the right people contacted him out of the blue. And I feel like there are so many stories like that as well, where people just turn to the mystical, whatever you call it, however you want to call it, it doesn't really matter. And then you see the effects, and they speak to you, they come back because you're, through a huge crisis, whatever crisis it is, you ask for help. The invisible realm, because there's no one around you otherwise that can help you, and they come in and they help you. So it's been quite an amazing story, and I hear a lot of those recently. So it's all very fascinating, and that actually, in a sense, keeps me going, because, like I mentioned before, there's so much going on that if I didn't have that backbone, the spiritual backbone, I don't think I could. I honestly, actually, I just don't know what I would do, to be honest. I can't even imagine. So, and then listening to other people's stories going through, very, very difficult situations, and suddenly having these signs and miracles happening for them all around is really, really interesting.
Yeah, especially when it's somebody that never had that sort of thing, that sort of belief before. And
Exactly.
through desperation, they just say, help me. And then they're suddenly open to it, because our guides and, the spirit guides and The different energies around us, the angels, whoever's working with us, can only help us if we ask. And if somebody's not used to asking because they've never had the belief that anybody's there, and suddenly they say, I want you to help me, and then everything synchronicitously falls into place,
Yeah.
then they sort of think, oh, okay, there's something to this, and that can be completely life-changing.
Yeah, yeah. And he's, holding his side of the bargain, and he talks about his experience now quite publicly because he started a podcast. So
Yeah.
that's how I know about this story, right? And he was in different interviews, when the word is spreading, right? So it's all very, very fascinating. So, Mel, what do you think are other tools that can help people with difficult times like these? So I brought with me my angel cards. I thought I might share them with you guys, and maybe we'll pull a card and just see what's the message for all of us, whoever's listening to this, whenever you're listening to this, so that we can have a little bit of message of hope. Yeah. What do you use? Do you use any other tools?
There's a few. It depends how I'm feeling, really. For the most part, I like to keep things really simple, because, like everybody, I've got a busy life. I don't want to spend ages trying to soothe myself, because if I do something that's quick and easy, I'm more likely to keep doing it than if it's long-winded and complex. So I balance my chakras every few days. I do use Reiki to do that. But equally, you can do it through visualization. You can do it through guided meditation. You can do it through asking your higher self and your spirit guides. And I always ask them to join me, so it's not just me doing it. You can visualize a column of light coming down through the crown of your head, going straight down the center of your body, out of your feet and into the earth, and then draw that back up from the earth as well, because of course we're connected to Mother Earth as well as the heavens, if you like. So we've got that energy coming from both directions to help. The earth can help to ground us and keep us calm and steady, and the higher frequency energies can cleanse and balance. That's how I see them. So I might see like a white light coming down, and then as the light enters the earth, I'll bring up a green light coming up. So I'll just do a visualization, and sometimes I will, use Reiki and actually put my hands on my chakras, but I can do that in 5 minutes just to cleanse my chakras, bring me into balance, center me, help to ground me by doing that visualization with the earth energy as well. And just doing that for a couple of minutes in the morning at the beginning of the day. It doesn't have to be anything more complex than that. You might find that your solitude comes from nature and from having a walk, and just incorporating a 10-minute walk at the beginning of the day, or sitting in the garden to have your cup of tea instead of sitting in the house and just being outside. But something quick, easy, simple is going to be more sustainable than anything really complex. You might even choose crystals. I've always got crystals on my desk. This is one of them, clear quartz, really easily available. You might sit and hold a crystal every day and just tune into the crystal's energy and let that balance and sort of bring that steady energy into your system. But choose something you like, one thing I would say, rather than complicating it, and try and do it every day if you can, particularly as we go through things like eclipses, where the energy can feel a bit more turbulent. Is just finding something that works for you, grounding, calming, just to bring that balance. It's 5 minutes out of your day, and it makes a difference to your whole day.
Yes, very true. And I would add to it also, from my own experience, as we've already discussed, we're all different, and we all have a different elements that are more prominent than others. So for those who maybe have a lot of air, or feel more like the kind who likes to talk about things, or they think about things a lot and they communicate, if you're having trouble with focusing, for example, like, we mentioned, you can imagine the white column of light, but I personally, sometimes I am in such a mood or a state, let's say, that it feels very difficult for me to do even that, because I might be like literally just, like at the skin of my teeth, like, very angry or something. I just don't want to even, it just doesn't feel like I can just sit and, imagine a column of light, even though it's so easy and quick. But what I go to is because I know that I have spirit guides and I have angels, and they're all there ready to always help me. And talking is one of the things that helps us as well, because it helps us release, whatever we are holding inside through words, right? It's literally our voice is creating this flow of energy that moves things from inside out. So you can just talk yourself through it. Just talk about whatever. If you want to swear. If you want to, whatever it feels like you want to talk about, or just get out of your system, then do that. And whilst you're doing it, you can literally ask your helpers to help you, so as if you're having a conversation with them, is what I'm kind of trying to say. It's like, picking up the phone to your friend and just, having a rant to your friend about something that's happening. That's in the same way, but with your spiritual helpers. And whilst you're doing that, you can ask them, please, can you help me like shift it and cleanse it? And because when we are in such a state of focused energy, which that kind of talking would put us in that focused energy, in almost a prayer, because if you're just talking to the other side, it's a form of a prayer, right? And that has power. The intention behind it, it has power in itself, and then they can help you then clear it whilst you're doing that as well. So you're kind of in action still. You're not, forcing yourself or something to sit down in stillness, for example, but it's kind of more action based, but it's also a good way of cleansing. That's what I found being helpful for myself when I can't sit still.
Yeah, and I use because I've got a lot of air in my chart as well. So I like to talk things through with my guides, with my higher self. I talk out loud. I'll talk in my head. I'm pretty much incessant. I'm never quiet. I have to really work at it when I meditate because I keep thinking. But that is actually really how I heal a lot of the time, is by thinking and talking and getting it out. And then I feel better, especially if I can physically vocalize it, talk to my guides all the time. That definitely helps shift that energy. And also, by the time I finished the conversation with them, my vibrations completely changed.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, there are many ways, and just make a choice which one speaks to you the best. Okay, so I was thinking, shall we pull a card and just see if there is a message for everyone who's watching?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you, angels, for revealing to us what we need to know. We are willing to listen. Very important part is to be willing to listen what they're saying, because it's not always what we want to hear, but it's what we need to hear. So we're asking for some guidance and advice regarding current energies of ascension, transformation, all of the eclipses and the planets that are changing signs, and we're all going through a lot on different levels, and we wish to have some guidance, please. Thank you. Opportunity and change. So look at the opportunity of the changes that are happening. So I kind of feel that's the message from it, is that it's not just chaotic change that leads to nowhere. It's because it's an opportunity. And I feel like this time round, it's actually, what I'm feeling is that it's almost like a portal is opening for people to be able to choose now. It's almost like a portal where you are, there's a fork on the road, or there are so many paths that are leading us from this point, and it's up to us to choose which path we want to take. And it honestly doesn't matter which one you take, but you have to, not have to, but it's, the whole point is that you have the opportunity to change your life. So all the things that are happening right now, they're for you to change towards what you always wished to create in your life. So take it as an opportunity, because I feel like the message with this is that there's a lot of things that are crumbling, that are being destroyed, or people are just very surprised, maybe in a negative way, in a sense of, oh, I didn't see that coming. Like, how is that even happening? We can't comprehend. But it's because it's such this chaotic energy is not leading us in any direction, because we're meant to be the ones who are choosing the direction that we want to take. So it's actually an opportunity for us to do that. And the power, is in your hands. So it's really up to you to actually make that choice. If you need any guidance, advice, then always ask your angels, your spirit guides. But follow your heart and what you feel is right for you, really. So that's the message for us.
Fabulous. And I have pulled the Empress card. This is in the Angel Wisdom Tarot. So the Empress card, I mean, this lady on this card is cuddling a unicorn, as you do. And she's got great big wings behind her. This is like the archetypal divine feminine. So it's a nurturing energy. It's an energy of taking care of yourself or other people. I mean, the Empress is a caregiver, but actually when I see this card, there's a few meanings. I mean, one of them is sort of creativity and having that creative spark, but the main energy I feel is that kind of nurturing sort of motherly energy. And how I apply that at the moment in these times is really nourishing myself, nurturing myself, and self-care being much higher up the agenda than it normally is. If I'm going to be honest, I'm not always great at self-care, but since the start of this year, my diet is super healthy now. It was okay before, but it's much better now. And I really do watch that I'm looking after myself. And I heard a channel say this probably a couple of months ago, your practices are going to be more important now than ever. So if you do take time to meditate, if you do take time to do yoga, walking nature, any of the things that we've talked about as well, grounding, now they're really going to be useful, because it really is important to carve out time for really looking after yourself and really taking good care of yourself and doing the stuff that nurtures you, the stuff that makes your soul sing. Because when the energy is so turbulent, we can't just stay in that energy all the time. We'll all burn out otherwise. So we have to take the time to really, really look after ourselves. And if self-care is maybe third or fourth on your list of priorities, it might be time to bump it up a bit.
Yes, definitely. Take a time out. Also, the other thing that just popped in my head, if you're unsure of what route to take, what choice to make, just sleep on it. It's really, you don't have to have all the answers right now. And I feel like all of the inspiration and the information is coming through to us, whether we know it or not, because the portal has opened. I haven't actually had that message before, so that's interesting, but I felt it very strongly from the angels. So that's very exciting, because I feel it's like a in a sense a limbo state in which we can shift one way or the other. So it's a very, very potent time to really make, in air quotes, right decisions, right? In how we want to react, how we want to live, how we want to proceed, because it will have a great impact on our personal life and of course collectively, because the more of the hard-led, let's say, changes that we make personally, the more of us the more of us do it, the more it will affect the collective, right? So
yeah, and I think with that as well, because there are times when we talk about, there's a lot of channels talking about the separation of the timelines and the splitting of the earth and everything else, which I see as basically a very watered down version of the fact that we have multiple parallel realities that I believe we've always had, but we're now starting to understand that. And in order to get our heads around it, we see, there's this timeline and there's this timeline. I actually think there's, I don't know, however many there are, thousands, I don't know. But again, the human mind is just like, no, can't deal with that. So let's just keep it simple. You can go that way or you can go that way. And I don't want anyone to panic and think, well, I said something yesterday that wasn't very loving. Does that mean I'm on the dark path and that's it? Like, no, this is not a shift that's happening overnight. This is taking habits and limiting beliefs and behaviors and adjusting, making small tweaks every day. Just tweak a little bit every day. Try and be a little bit more loving today. Try and speak to yourself in a nicer way today. Try and choose things that you feel are really good for your body and your mind and your soul. Don't think you've got to get it perfect in one day, or you're on the path to destruction. You're not. It's these subtle changes when we notice that we're in judgment. I'm judging. Okay, don't beat yourself up the fact that you've been doing it for the last 10 minutes, because you just drop your vibration. Just become aware of the fact that you've done it. Be grateful for the fact that you're aware, because that's wonderful. And then you can shift your thought patterns and think, okay, I'm being a bit harsh on myself or on someone else. I'm going to try and be a bit more loving. But we're not expected to get it right overnight. And, it doesn't mean that you're on some dark path. You're not. It's just fine tuning and tweaking. And that's what all of us are trying to do.
Yes, exactly. And you made a great point, because I think it's important that we don't forget we're human still, right? So one, don't judge, like you say. And two, just because you maybe said or behaved in a certain way, your awareness of that fact is where the power is. And that is where you can see where you're really going. Because if you did or said something, but then you weren't aware and you don't see that it wasn't, I don't like these labels, but I kind of need to use it. It wasn't good, or it wasn't right, or it wasn't, heart-led. You're aware of it, and you're that's the whole point. That means that you're in a different vibration, you're in a higher vibration, just being aware of your actions and, rethinking them, but also being able to reconcile it inside of you with yourself, forgive yourself, or forgive someone else, whatever the situation is, whatever it looks like for you. All of these practices are what raises your vibration. And even when things like that are happening, it's very possible that it's the cleansing, right? You're cleansing, you are actually maybe behaving a little bit more erratically or a bit out of character, because perhaps all of the things that were still buried inside, that weren't serving your highest good, are just coming out now. That's the whole point of, we think that maybe if we're on the right track, then it means that we've forgotten everything that's bad that's happened, and it's just kind of like, not visible in our perception. But that's actually not true. It's the other way around. It's when we are aware of what happened, and we can still love these parts of ourselves. That's where the alchemy happens.
Yeah, absolutely. The first step is awareness. It's being aware of it. And it's don't fall into the trap, like I've done, of judging yourself for judging. Because when I notice I've judged myself or I've judged someone else, then I have a go at myself for judging, and it's like I'm still doing it.
Exactly.
You got to break the loop. Stop.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's actually a message that's very close to my heart. I have at some point last year, I have rebranded, and I have called my brand Love Embraced. And it's actually from, if you bear with me, it's because of one of the cards that's in my deck, and it's a card of Archangel Haniel. And Archangel Haniel is an archangel of, she kind of reminds me of the energy of the moon. So anything to do with the emotions, with feminine energy, right? So emotions, compassion, forgiveness, love, and her card, it says on here, embraced by love, let love reach where it has never reached before. I think it's the other way around if I show to the screen, but that's I feel it would be very potent right now, because we're going through the lunar eclipses, the solar eclipses, everything to do with the moon, right? So if you need some maybe guidance in that area, you can call on Archangel Haniel. There it is. I gave you a little bit of a tip, maybe, if you're not sure who to call on. Obviously, everyone always has guardian angels and spirit guides, and all kinds of inspirers and helpers. So yeah, you don't have to name any particular deity or angel, but yeah, if you want to, then call on Archangel Haniel.
So for me, when it comes to kind of asking for support, I have called upon certain beings and certain energies before. Depends what mood I'm in. But a lot of the time, I just call on my guides because I know I've got all sorts of different energies and different guides. And I might ask for a certain energy. So I might say, look, I really need some action energy. I'm feeling a bit tired, but I got lots of stuff to do. So I ask for that type of energy, or ask for a boost, or I ask for a family member who I know had that kind of energy that can help me. If I need calming and soothing, there's other family members that might have an energy that's akin to that. Or I ask my guides, I need some soothing energy. I need some calming energy. I'm feeling anxious. I want you to soothe my chakras, help me to relax, and they'll do it. So if you're not sure about who to ask, think about what you need. What kind of energy do you need? And just ask them to bring that in.
So I hope this helped everyone, and that there are some bits and pieces that you can use and incorporate into your life. If you have any questions about anything that we have covered today, or anything else that comes to your mind, please let us know, and we would be more than happy to talk about it next time. Is there anything else that you would like to add, Mel?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered everything that we're experiencing, the things that we're hearing other people experiencing, to bring some comfort so that people who are going through a bit of an emotionally turbulent time maybe understand a reason why it could be happening. If there's nothing happening in your life that would cause you anxiety and stress, it could literally be the Ascension energies. So if there's nothing you need to take care of in your life, then just take care of yourself. And we are all going through this together. So you're absolutely not on your own.
Yeah, you're not alone, for sure. Don't forget. Okay, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening.